Hey everybody, Scott Bischoff here for Detroit Lions Podcast. We are going to break down it's a preview of the Lions home game against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 13. First things first, and more important than anything I've got going on here, Chris does this great thing for St. Jude. It's Christmas for the kids. If you feel compelled and you can, please donate. It's Christmas for the kids. It's at stjude.org/DLP, Detroit Lions Podcast. So stjude.org/DLP. If you can't find it there, it's on my Twitter page. It's on Chris's Twitter page. There's a link to each there. It's maybe a week and a half old, in that range. If you feel compelled and you can. It's a great thing that Chris does. It's a remarkable thing that he's doing. It's awesome. So stay tuned. We're going to break down the Lions at home against Jaguars in Week 13 in a surprisingly important game. It's one of those games on the schedule. I think most people would have just circled this as a win going into the season, but this should be a tight game. So coming at you right now, Lions preview for Week 13. Stay tuned. Okay, so it feels like it's been a while since I've done one of these, because we had the Thanksgiving game, which was it's never good to lose games, but that one was a different kind of a loss. It's a game that they could have won. They had a chance to knock the Bills out. And I guess we could talk about that 3rd and 1 play before we move on to this preview. They played a good game both on offense and defense. They did a reasonable job in every way. The Lions are a competitive team. They play hard. I think the direction, if you just look at trend lines, we should all be pretty optimistic about where they are and where they're headed. The direction of where they're going. Obviously, they have a long way to go, and there's things that are still problematic. Some of the clock management stuff, and decision making, some of the things going on. But and I'm going to disagree with some people, and I'm fine. Not necessarily being wrong or right or any of that stuff. It's just an opinion. I think on that 3rd and 1 play, if you dial up a play where you get one-on-one coverage with Chark running open, and I think one of the things that a lot of people have lost a little bit of sight on is that it wasn't just Chark who was open. Amon-Ra St. Brown was open underneath. The tight end Zylstra was wide open in the middle of the field. I think Zylstra would have scored. Chark would have scored. Amon-Ra would probably have gained, I'm going to guess, 15 yards and a first down. I understand that Goff had locked on to Chark, and I get it because he was blitzed, and there was it's kind of a run blitz. He didn't have the luxury of pivoting away from his first read. He had to make the throw, so he would have had to have been staring at St. Brown to make the throw, but it would have been an easy throw. Or he would have had to have been looking at Zylstra in the middle of the field. It would have been an easy throw. The Chark throw wasn't an easy throw, but it was easy enough that he should have completed it. And there is the conundrum of that. There is the Jared Goff problem, right? So then secondarily to that is, do you make that play call knowing that you don't think your quarterback can complete that pass? I'm fine with the 3rd and 1 play. I'm fine with throwing a haymaker. I don't think it's reasonable to think that draining out the clock and making a field goal was something that was going to eventually get them a win. I know it's easy to think that. I hope this isn't coming across the right way, because there's no right or wrong way to look at these things. But I just, I think that if you have an opportunity to win the game, you take it. And they really should have, in that scenario, been able to execute and finish and win that game. Leaving time on the clock obviously it didn't work for him. But I'm fine with the choice they made. I don't think taking Buffalo to overtime, was going to get you a win. So that's where I am with that. We can agree to disagree. We can talk about it. It's a complicated discussion because it does involve the expectation of thinking that your quarterback can't make that throw. Then why would you call that play? To me, it's still a great play call because it gave you the opportunity for multiple targets to run wide open, and you just didn't execute. But everything else about that game was super exciting to see, in both on offense and defense, and again, the trajectory of where they're headed and where they're going. Okay, so the numbers. We're going to get through the numbers real quick because we got a lot to hit. So the game total is 51.5. Vegas is thinking this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think this is one of those games like the Philly game from earlier in the season, like the Seattle game. There's been others where the Lions have had to score points to stay in games, take leads to stay in. You know what I mean? Like the offense is going to be able to score points on Jacksonville, or they should be able to. And I think the defense is going to struggle in moments because Trevor Lawrence has looked really, really good, especially I would say the last 4 weeks. His decision making, the efficiency, how quick and decisive he is. He looks like he's really starting to figure it out. And the numbers do bear it out. We'll get into that. Jacksonville's a 1.5-point favorite on the road. The implied number has Jacksonville at 26.5 and the Lions at 25. Okay, so on offense, the Lions are tied for 13th in the NFL, averaging 4.6 yards per carry. Jacksonville is averaging 4.9. They're tied for 5th. The Lions have rushed for 16 total touchdowns, which is 3rd in the NFL. It's a huge number. Jacksonville's run for 11, which is tied for 10th. Now to the passing games. The Lions are tied for 11th in the NFL, 7.4 yards per attempt. Jacksonville's at 6.9 yards per attempt, which is 18th in the NFL. Passing touchdowns generated. The Lions have thrown 17 touchdowns, which is tied for 10th in the NFL. Jacksonville's thrown 16, which is it's 16th in the NFL. So kind of right in the middle of the pack, Jacksonville is there. On defense, the Lions are 30th in the NFL, allowing 5.2 yards per carry. Jacksonville allows 4.2 yards per carry, which is 8th in the NFL. The Lions have given up 18 rushing touchdowns, 31st in the NFL. And Jacksonville's given up 10, which is tied for 14th. Pass defense. The Lions have given up 7.5 yards per attempt, which is 30th in the NFL. Jacksonville's given up 7.1, which is 25th. I'm sorry I'm looking down, but this is a lot of numbers to remember, and I'm going to get them wrong unless I'm looking at them. Passing touchdowns allowed. Detroit have given up 18 total, which is tied for 22nd, and Jacksonville's given up 17, which is tied for 19th. So you can see, in those numbers, you can see the Lions have given up a lot of running touchdowns, and they're middle of the pack ish. In giving up passing touchdowns. So sacks allowed. The Lions have given up 17 sacks, which is not a lot at all. It's really remarkable. Tied for 2nd in the NFL. Jacksonville's only given up 21, which is 6th in the NFL. Sacks generated. So the Lions have generated 20 sacks. They're moving in the right direction there. We'll get into that in a minute. Which is tied for 26th in the NFL. Jacksonville's only generated 17 sacks, which is tied for 28th. This is a good thing for Jared Goff, and it's almost we talked about this weeks ago. You can almost draw these games out. If a team can pressure Goff, it limits what the Lions can do. If Goff does have time and they can get play action working, and the Lions' offense can be pretty explosive, but they are capped because of how Goff handles pressure. Interceptions, the Lions have 9 interceptions on the season. Jacksonville has 9 on defense on the season, tied for 9th. Detroit has thrown 7, which is tied for 9th, and Jacksonville's only thrown for 6, which is tied for 5th. So those are the numbers overall on the season. We're going to look at this in a 4-week block to see what the averages are, both on offense and defense, and to see where they are, where are they headed? I know I've given you, numbers through 12 weeks and 11 games, but these are the averages over the last 4 weeks. So Goff is averaging, it's not great, but this is what it is. Goff is like 18 of 29 on average for 195 yards. He's thrown 5 total touchdowns in the last 4 games, so he's averaging just over 1 touchdown a week. And he's doing a really good job of taking care of the ball. He's only thrown 1 interception in the last 4 games. So good numbers. The Lions have not run the ball as effectively over the last 4 games as they did in the beginning of the season, but there's some injury stuff hidden in there. Last week you're missing both guards. I think Ragnow might have missed week 9 in that range. But the numbers are they're around 32 carries for 117 yards on average, which is 3.69 yards per carry, which is kind of low. But they do have a bunch of rushing touchdowns. They've got 7 rushing touchdowns in this 4-week span, so you're looking at just under 2 a game. It's very, very impressive. Jacksonville on offense. Trevor Lawrence is 28 of 36 on average over the last 3 games because they had a bye in week 11. So again, 28 of 36. That's really good for on average 272 yards a game. He's thrown 6 touchdowns in those 3 games, no interceptions. Jacksonville's run game has not been all that effective in the last 3 weeks. They've run the ball 70 times, so it's on an average of like 23 carries a game for 90 yards, which is around 3.8 yards per carry. They have 2 total touchdowns rushing in those 3 games. So, you're looking at an offense that's much more explosive in the passing game than they are in the running game. So I wanted to look at a little deeper into the trend, and I promise this will be quick. A little deeper into the trend of what the Lions defense has done the last 4 games, and running quarterbacks are killing the Lions. So on defense, the last 4, they have the average is 22 of 37 for 263 yards allowed, 1.5 touchdowns, 1.75 interceptions, which is a little crazy to think that. And then it's 2.25 sacks they've generated each week. So they've ticked up the pressure. They're getting home with the pressure a little more. They're turning over the ball. They're making plays in the secondary more. You had 3 interceptions against Green Bay. You had 1 against Chicago. You had 2 against the Giants, and you had 1 against Josh Allen last week. So you're seeing the Lions defense kind of take a huge step in a positive direction over these last 4 games. Still giving up yards. I think it's to be expected with some of the injuries they have. I mean, Tracy Walker's out. Akuta's missed time. You're missing edge players. You're missing pass rushers. You're missing pieces. Yet you're still productive on defense, and you're doing things where they look a lot better on defense. I don't want to say since Aubrey Pleasant left, but it kind of does. It does fit there, and it makes me wonder. Like what exactly, what's happening there in the passing game for them to suddenly get some turnovers and to get some pressure. They have given up 6 total touchdowns throwing in the last 4 games. So I mean they're doing okay. The run game, they've given up 112. It's 112 carries for 609 yards over the last 4 games, which is about 5.4 yards per carry, and they've given up 5 touchdowns total on the ground. But the caveat there is a lot of that is to opposing quarterbacks. So you had Justin Fields in there, you had Daniel Jones in there, you had Josh Allen in there. So, the average is 28 carries for 152 yards a game is what they've given up. But if we take out the quarterback runs, you're looking at giving up 20 carries for 83 yards, just over 4 yards a pop, and only surrendering 1 touchdown rushing to the opposition. So, you're looking at a defense that's playing significantly more stout against the run. Still room to grow and work to do, but you look at the Justin Fields game where he went off, and it's just running quarterbacks are tough for the Lions. They just are. But I think the nuts and bolts of the numbers is that you can see where the Lions are effective on offense. And you can see how the trends for them, it's much better on defense this past 4 games than, say, the first 7 games. So I think we should expect more of this. We should expect more pressure. And I think we'll still see some turnovers because of a little more pressure. I think the Lions have done a pretty adequate job figuring it out on defense to get their players in a situation. Now, it's not perfect, but to get their guys playing at their optimum. So those are the numbers. Now, matchup-wise, we talked about this a little bit. I don't think the Jaguars are going to make Jared Goff all that uncomfortable in this game. They will at times. He needs to be comfortable. You can see, that 3rd and 1 play against Buffalo is like the perfect example of it. He kind of freaked, and I get it because he had an unblocked blitzing linebacker about to destroy him. But that's where he's at his weakest, when he has to deal with pressure. You get the happy feet, the inaccuracy. There was also a throw he made. I don't know what he was doing. He threw it to the linebacker who dropped it. That was under pressure too in that game. So there was just some weird stuff with him with pressure, and that's just kind of what he is. But I don't think Jacksonville is capable of bringing a ton of pressure. And I think that the Lions are obviously going to try to get the running game going like they have every week, and it's got to be. I'm sure everybody laughs at this point watching these things when I talk down and distance and how it matters. If the Lions can put themselves in a good place, running the ball, you can get the play action game going, and that's where Jared Goff is at his best. When he's comfortable and in rhythm and in time with his receivers. So I don't think it's out of the realm to think that Goff can't have a pretty good game in this matchup, and I think he should. I think he'll be comfortable. I think they'll be able to do what they want to do, which to me, I hope, is establish the run, play action, and then get Amon-Ra St. Brown involved in the short to intermediate game where, it's short throwing but lots of runs after the catch, that kind of stuff. I don't have anything to base this off, but I think this is a game where maybe DeAndre Swift makes a big play. An explosive play where he goes for 40 or 50 yards, whether it's a catch or a run, something like that. It's just a vibe. So I think the Lions will be able to run the ball effectively, and I think that they'll be able to use the passing game in a nice way, offset by the run, because the run will be effective. Now, remember, play action is it's awesome, it's great, but you don't have to be running the ball effectively to run play action well. You just have to sell play action on that specific play. So, the Lions could be averaging 1 yard a carry and they can still run play action effectively because you can freeze linebackers and defenders by selling the action of the play really well. And the Lions seem to do a pretty good job of that. So, on offense, I think that the Lions will be okay this week. Obviously, the implied total being at 25, and with me thinking they're going over, I think you're looking at them getting to low 30s in this game. Their offense is explosive. They have the capability of throwing the ball. Again, this is predicated on Goff being comfortable. They can throw the ball effectively, not necessarily explosively down the field, but they can move the chains pretty well. And, they haven't run the ball great over the last little bit, but they're capable of doing it. And it'll be interesting to see who comes back if we get, Jonah Jackson back It's a big deal. I mean, he's a good player. So that's what it is on offense. I think the Lions will be okay, and it should be, they should put up some points. But then the whole thing here, this whole matchup is how do you limit what Trevor Lawrence has going? Because, it was impressive to watch him last week against Baltimore. He has plenty of arm strength. But a lot of the problems in the past were just decision making, and not being able to weed out areas of the field where he did not want to attack immediately, and therefore taking his either his primary read or his secondary read and just getting the ball out. And it seems to me, after watching Lawrence the past couple games, it seems to me like his decision making has been sped up a lot, to where he seems to understand areas of the field where he shouldn't put the ball, and then gets the ball out both accurately and on time, and which is allowing his receivers to make plays. And he's been really, really impressive, and he's been very impressive, and that's a concern for this week, is that Trevor Lawrence has been, I wouldn't say spectacular, but it's pretty close to being spectacular over the last 3 weeks. They have it's a hodgepodge of players between Christian Kirk, who they paid a lot of money to in the offseason, and Zay Jones, who had a ton of targets last week. And he needs more targets, but I mean, he's a good secondary option. Evan Ingram is their tight end, and he's fine, but Lawrence is spreading the ball around. Again, I think the big thing for him is decision making and how quick he is, and then it's the athleticism and the arm strength and all of the other intangibles that he has always had. He's cashing in on those things now, because the mental, it's like the mental side of the game is slowed down for him, and he's really been he's been fantastic. So that's the it's going to be interesting to see what the Lions do this week with if Okudah is back. Where how do they deploy him? My guess is he probably covers their outside receivers, Zay Jones. I think Kirk will play. They'll move Kirk all over the place. It'll be interesting to see how the Lions deploy their secondary and also bring pressure, right? So I mean that's going to be that's going to be kind of like where this thing is from a pressure standpoint. Can the Lions continue to generate more pressure? Because they struggled early in the season to get home. But they've done a better job of recent, and can they keep that up? And then can you win the turnover battle? And just like every game, these close games, again, Jacksonville's favored by 1.5. It's going to be a close game. What I think is going to be kind of a high-scoring game. It's ultimately the game's going to be decided by a team that maybe gets a turnover, or teams that are just more efficient in the red zone than other teams. So that's the look for this week. I know. There's going to be a separate video that's going to come out in a day or so with some of the questions that were asked on Twitter, and it's going to be some draft stuff that we're going to hit up. So check that one out too. But this is a preview for this week. I expect a bit of a higher scoring game. I expect the Lions and Jacksonville to play a very tight game, probably a pretty exciting game. My guess is people come out of this game talking about Trevor Lawrence very differently than they do going in, with the exposure and just how good he's played. He's playing at he's a quarterback one right now. He's a really he's made the strides he's made since Urban Meyer left. It's remarkable. Doug Pederson's doing a great job with that offense. And they're a good unit. Another, not a fear, but another thing to consider this week is that I think Travis Etienne is back, and he has the potential to go off. He is a very, very good football player, a very good running back, very good out of the backfield. It's it'll be interesting to see how the Lions deploy their defensive players to try to limit, Jacksonville's receivers and Lawrence both running the ball and generating pressure on him, but then stopping at the end too. So it's a tall task. None of these games are easy going forward, but the Lions are in a position where, they've played pretty well. They've played pretty consistent. They should be in this game. There's no reason they shouldn't be. So that's the preview for this week. Stay tuned for another video coming out on some of the questions that were on Twitter, and it's going to be just a generalized draft one. So there's your Week 13 preview. As always, if you have questions, hit me up on Twitter, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.